Welcome to So It's Not Just Me, the podcast where we discuss things that have affected our life and make us the person we are today. Today, I'm really excited. We are joined by Keanan. Keanan is from my hometown of Doncaster, and he grew up. Well, I know Keanan through my dad, so through family. And Keanan has such a wide variety of things in his pocket. He has so many hats. So, Keanan, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, Joanna, thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast. And yeah, as you said, I go back way back with your dad, and all of our sort of mutual school friends. Yeah, I grew up in Doncaster. I grew up in a village called Wadworth, which is probably about, I think it's probably the same size as it was when I grew up, like 2,000 people. And I met your dad and met many of our other friends around the same time, probably 1976, 1977, during the punk rock explosion. And we were all these little sort of young teenage tearaways, or at least we were trying to be tearaways. I don't think we were really. I think we were all quite nice kids and quite dedicated to whatever it was we wanted to do. And we've all stayed in touch over the years. You know, the wonder of the internet is that you can
Yes.
kind of keep in contact. It's one of the great things. There's a lot of downsides about it, but the great thing about social media is you can stay in touch with all your old mates and pretty much you know what everyone's doing. So, but thank
No
you for
secret.
inviting me on. I'm happy to chat with you.
I'm really excited because, as I say, I've known of you for a long, long time. And as we discussed really, really briefly before we came on, you did help me a little bit with my GCSEs when I was back in school. Um, and I'm going to sound really embarrassed now, but I've always kind of admired the things that you've done from what people have told me, mainly my dad. Whenever there was a new design out that you'd done, or if there was a store that you was working with, I was always quite interested. And um, it always made my imagination work a bit more. And I think sometimes that probably led me to be confident, knowing that somebody from the same town I was from was doing such great things. So thank you very much for that. Um, as you say, you grew up in Doncaster and you started in paid education, then moved on to a comprehensive.
Yeah.
Was there a reason behind that?
Um, well, the reason why I went to a boarding school was because my mum and dad grew up in Dennerby, which is close to Conisbrough,
Yeah,
which is a small village close to Doncaster. And they both left school when they were 14. My dad went down the pit, as it's colloquially known, the KB Colliery, when he was 40. Can you believe that? 14 years old
that's
going down a coal
crazy.
mine. And my mum worked in the powder works, which sounds very fancy, but it was actually the explosives factory for the pit. So
Christ.
she saw a lot of her friends lose fingers, and you know, they both decided, I think, pretty quickly that these weren't the lives that they wanted, and they became entrepreneurs. You know, they both trained as hairdressers. Actually, my dad went in the army for a couple of years, and then he came out of the army, and they trained to be hairdressers. So they didn't have an education beyond the age of 14. They're both self-taught. So when I came along, I think they thought the best thing they could do was give this little boy a good education. So I was sort of packed off to boarding school at the age of 9, which traumatized me for about the next 30 years. Good intentions, but it wasn't really for me. So
Right.
as soon as I could get away, I wanted to join all of my friends, and go to Edlington Comprehensive, which was the school close to where I lived. So I kind of escaped from boarding school at the age of 15, and went to the local comprehensive, and then was able to like be with all of my mates who I would only see during school holidays. So that was really, it was, I forget what the phrase is, but it's something about good intentions, um, and the outcome isn't necessarily maybe what you want. But yeah, that was why I went into paid education. It's why I came out of paid education. So
Do you think if you'd stayed in paid education, your path would have gone the way it has?
I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, it's you can't possibly. I mean, life is where it takes you, and where you try to go. It's very difficult to say what if. Uh, I what I found what was great about going to my local school was there was a great O level design teacher. There was no level in design. I mean, we didn't have that in the boarding school. The art
Right,
teacher was very encouraging. The English teacher was amazingly encouraging. Uh, I kind of had a bit of a dalliance with contemporary dance, which they weren't teaching that in boarding school for sure, and I wasn't very good, but it was a way to express yourself.
yeah,
So I think the my experience with going to a comprehensive was actually much more artistically free,
right,
and I'm very grateful for that. I don't underestimate the power of education, and I was lucky enough to be of an age where not only you're sort of we call it high school here in the States, but not only high school was free, but also you could go to college or university for free.
yeah,
And that took it meant that higher education was really mixed. There were a lot of people from very different backgrounds, very different means, some people from different parts of the world, different nationalities, different ethnic backgrounds, and so on. And it was great. That was a magical time. I feel, the world is very different today, and higher education is a business, and that was a barrier to entry for a lot of young people because of that, and
yeah.
not fair, frankly.
So I don't know what things were like back in the day when you guys were growing up. Um, how did because I always imagined Doncaster being quite a small town, and obviously Wadworth, Edlinton, those kind of areas. Um, how did that influence your style and the fashion and the music that you obviously went on to create?
Well, I think we were all very expressive kids and expressive peers. We all influenced each other. I mean, your dad used to make stencils and screen and print T-shirts from making stencils,
Oh, he
and
still does.
yeah, I know, and he taught me how to do that. So we were all kind of making our own T-shirts, and during punk, that was an amazing period because it suddenly it kicked down the doors for a lot of young people. You didn't necessarily have to be good, but you had to have an intention and an energy. And
Right.
if you wanted to, make a fanzine, you would photocopy your pages and staple them together and take them and give them away to friends or try and sell them or whatever. If you wanted to make clothes, you would just have a go, and there were no rules and there was no barrier. And I think we all really embraced that. Um, it was it was a great time. I mean, it's not today. It's quite similar. You've got social media allows a young person to connect with the world
Yeah.
and to do something and show the world what they're doing. And I think that's a very positive thing too. So, yeah, it was. I mean, it was a great time for us. So it was very. We were young, we were naive, and we were kind of having a great time. And it was quite a safe world, actually.
Yeah.
Um, that was the great thing about it. You could, kind of go somewhere and not have a fear of anything really bad happening to you.
When did you decide to move from England to the US?
Um, I actually moved to the US in 1993, and
Right.
but I'd been working for I went to college in London, so I moved to London in 1982. I did a 4-year BA, and I graduated in '86, and then I tried to do my own collection in London. I'd actually been making clothes and selling them in school, and I'd actually been making music and like making records and all sorts of doing gigs and all sorts of stuff in college.
Right.
And so I continued doing that after I graduated. But I suddenly realized I had no business sense. I didn't know how to do it in a practical way. So after a couple of years, I thought I better get a job, and kind of learn the way these industries work. So I got a job with a company, not the first company, but the second company I got a job with. They had an office in Japan, in Tokyo and an office in New York in the US, and I was going to both of these cities regularly, and I just thought, I should give it a go and go and live somewhere else for a while and get that world experience. The idea
Yeah.
was, a couple of years in America and then probably go back to the UK. And now it's 31 years later. So, I don't think I'm going to be going back to the UK to live. I always go back to visit, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I say the same. I like to, and I've only been here 3 years, but I like to go back to visit. But after a week or two, it's too cold, so I want to come back. But I'm in Florida, so it's a bit different.
Yeah, I mean, there's the weather, there's the energy.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that are I actually find the longer I'm away from Great Britain, when I go back, I appreciate it even more. And
Yes.
I recently went to Liverpool. I hadn't been to Liverpool for 20 something years. Fantastic city. I mean,
Yeah.
the architecture, everything's been cleaned up. There's a lot of new architecture. There's the 1800s architecture from, the era of the shipping and docks and everything. And the dock area of Liverpool's fantastic. They've got a Tate Gallery, they've got the Museum of Liverpool, and really fantastic. So
Yeah.
I haven't been back to Doncaster since the early 90s. So I'm sure I would be as equally amazed, that the changes that have happened, the
Yeah.
hopefully the heart and soul's still there, but it's like the rest of the world, everything's kind of moving and changing and evolving, which is great.
And everything moves so quickly as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Excuse me.
yeah.
Did you find any challenges when you came over to New York? What was the hardest thing you had to deal with?
The hardest thing I had to do with was getting legal because I came here illegally. I came here
Oh.
on a tourist visa with an intention to stay.
Oh.
So I had to find some work quickly to like survive, but I also had to find a way to be sponsored to get initially to get an H-1 visa, and I
Yeah.
was lucky to I got a job with a fashion company, and the guy who's the owner of that fashion company was still very good friends after all these years. He actually is from Miami, but was living in New York at the time, and eventually moved back to Miami. So yeah, we're very good friends. We stayed friends, and he got me my working papers.
Oh, nice.
So that was, the challenges were practical, um, but New York was very. It was kind of like the Pandora's box opened when I got here because, even in London, things closed at 11 o'clock. So my first year in New York, I was a maniac. I was like out all night, every night, and I actually got the first job I had. I got fired from because I was just partying too much. um, but it was an amazing. It was very positive. New York had a very positive energy. It was relatively cheap in those days too. You could find a place to live. It's really changed in 30 years, but it was the challenges were not insurmountable. Getting legal and making a bit of money to live and so on, and finding a place to live and a place to stay. It was quite easy. I mean, I was obviously meant to be here because the doors opened, quite easily.
Yeah. I found that as well. I did come legally. I came, so I came on a nester, but I did have the intentions to leave. But then I caught COVID. So things got drawn out a little bit longer and
Right.
one thing leads to another. But I was here legally. I had my return flight ready to go and a job back home to go to. So, but I understand the pressures of then having to find a job once you are legal and
Yeah.
uh, making ends meet and things. So
Yeah.
it's interesting, definitely interesting. Um, have you always been into like the new romantic punk rock kind of scene?
Yeah, I mean, well, it was. I think maybe your dad and maybe some of our other peers would say the same thing. It was a moment. Certainly, the punk movement was a moment that was happening in real time. You were kind of living it. We were obviously younger than the generation of bands that we kind of looked up to,
Yeah,
but we it was happening right in front of you. And I think that moment when you're a young teenager, and something has that impact on you in real time. It's indelible. It never really goes away. And the punk thing, the new romantic thing wasn't that different to the punk thing. It was still kids making their own clothes and putting on weird makeup and dyeing their hair and going out late and going to clubs and listening to uh, probably not very good music, but really loving it and enjoying it. It was just the next step, really.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, what was interesting for me about punk initially is I met a lot of people that I would maybe it would have taken me a few more years to meet in life. People that I um, uh, wouldn't maybe have connected with other than through the punk scene.
Right.
And that was fantastic. I mean, the first gay person that I met was through the punk scene,
Right.
and that was a fantastic sort of epiphany for me. I didn't know anything about that lifestyle and that demographic of people, and it was a real demystification because in the 70s you kind of had there was a lot of negativity around people who were gay or people who are from an alternative lifestyle.
Yeah.
And suddenly we were all thrown into this punk scene together. It's like, oh yeah, we're all the same. So, um, it was great. It was really enlightening.
Um, I'm gonna drop a few names because I can. So you've done work with people like David Bowie, the Sex Pistols. I think I read that you did some work with Gwen Stefani. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
So
very
when I
nice.
was younger, I absolutely adored Gwen Stefani. I was a huge No Doubt fan, and I always wanted to look like her, but I was never brave enough. How was it for you working with people like that?
It was generally fantastic. I really enjoyed. I mean, Gwen's a lovely person. She's very down to earth. She was very hardworking and conscientious. Um, we went out to her house in Beverly Hills to work on the collection for a few days, and we did a show in New York at Bryant Park during Fashion Week. Um, it was great. I mean, I think people that are pretty famous. I had this experience with Bowie. He was just very. His dad's from Doncaster.
Oh, I
His
didn't know
dad was,
that.
yeah, his dad was born in Saint Sepulchre Gate in Doncaster. So when I first met uh, Bowie, David, he said, "Oh yeah, I know all about Doncaster," and I thought he meant because he played there in the '70s, but he was
Right.
actually talking about his dad. He liked northern people. The people in the Spiders from Mars are all from Hull and you know uh, adjacent areas around Hull, basically. So he had a real affinity with Yorkshire people. He kind of liked our very, blunt, straightforward, honest, tell it like it is,
Yes.
no nonsense. And so yeah, that was great. And then the Pistols, I am very good friends with Glenn Matlock. I stay with Glenn often when I go to London, and Steve Jones, Cookie. Paul Cook is the drummer. I don't know as well, but yeah, they're again great people. The singer, not so much. He's a great singer, but maybe not someone you want to hang around with too much.
No, maybe
Um,
not.
he's well named, but yeah, generally it's like you can. I'm very fortunate to have worked with a lot of people that I admire and that inspired me. Either as a kid or throughout my whole life. I mean, Gwen. I know all her influences coming from like the Specials and Scar and those kind of that British music scene.
Yeah.
She was really into that, and she was into that as a kid as well.
Right.
There's a big mod thing going on in Southern California, and the scooter scene and the Scar scene was huge there and still is to a degree. So we kind of we had a lot of references that we both understood that you maybe wouldn't necessarily get with other American people because that was very particular to California. So yeah, I mean, I think there's you find your similarities with people, um, and it's funny because famous people uh, have a good trick of demystifying the fact that they're very famous
Yeah.
and you're in their presence. They just kind of if most people that I've met are really good at doing that. They make it feel like it's not weird. Bowie was very good at it. It was, and also with him, he was David Jones. That's actually David's name was David Jones. And when you were with him, he was kind of David Jones. He wasn't even Bowie, because Bowie was another character.
Right.
So he was even more, and just a lovely guy and very funny, very witty. Like
Just
to
like
have a
sitting
bit of
on
a
the
laugh.
couch having a cuppa with a mate kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, kind of. He really did, but he was also very interested and inquisitive and wanted to know. He asked a lot of questions all the
Oh, good.
time. He was somebody who asked a lot of questions. So yeah, it was. I mean, I work with, you know, I work with a lot of well-known people, and generally I have had very good experiences with everyone. Sometimes I've worked with someone, and then other people have said to me, "Oh, that person was a pain in the neck," but they actually weren't with me, so that's good.
I think sometimes, I don't know how you feel about it, but a lot of the time people hear my accent and instantly treat me differently in a nice way. So I don't know, sometimes that's the same with you. Like they hear the English and it's something, I don't know if it's the same up there as it is down here, but it's a little bit or something new. So they take a step back and they kind of relax a bit more with the accent. So maybe that's something going in our favour.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I think that, when I first moved to the US, I didn't think about, having an accent as being a benefit. But a lot of people would say, oh, you're British, people will listen, with a British accent. And it's what's interesting is because when I moved to London, I had much more of a Yorkshire accent when I was a kid. It was never super strong because I went away to a school where I was mixed with a lot of people with different ways of speaking and
Yeah.
colloquially. Can't say that word, but anyway, their sort of slang and things were different, and so on. Um, and then when I went to London, everybody took the mickey out of me because they were like, "Oh, he's up from Oak North, and he's got from he's got grass growing out of his ears." These were people that were from Liverpool and like
Right.
Birmingham. you know, my mates in school were a couple of them were total scallies from Liverpool. And they would make fun
Right.
of me about my accent, and I'd be like, "Wait a minute, guys." But I think it affected me because I kind of lost. I picked up a London accent, lost a lot of a Yorkshire
Right.
accent. So yeah, when I moved to the States, the thing about regional accents in Britain, when you move here, you're just British. It doesn't
Yes.
matter whether you're from Liverpool or whether you're from, wherever you're from, the Black Country or the South or the North, you're just a Brit.
Yep.
So
And we know that we sound different, but
yeah.
not to anyone else. What um what do you think's your biggest pinch me moment? Like you can't believe this has happened or something that you're most proud of happening?
Well, I have to say, I mean, there's been a few of them actually, but I have to say, there's been a few. One was working with Bowie. The first time that I met him, that was weird because somebody that really influenced me when I was a little kid, and I'd kind of grown up with and stayed with as well. I mean, even when he had his dodgy '80s period where he was making really bad records, and even he said he was making really bad records, so I'm not being rude. But then being in a room with a guy, and then he's great. He's great, and he's making fun of me, and he's like, kidding around and things immediately. And that was like, wow. The other pinch me moment was, so I was in a band in the mid 2000s with Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols, Clem Burke, who's one of the best rock and roll drummers in the history of music from Blondie, and
Hmm.
Earl Slick, who's Bowie's guitar player for many, many years. And we had a gig. Our first ever gig was supporting the New York Dolls at Irving Plaza in New York, which is a big venue. It's like a couple of thousand people. And I was singing and playing guitar. We walked out on stage, and it was like, wow, you know, this is kind of amazing. We're supporting the Dolls, who were a band that we all loved when we were kids. We thought they were fantastic. And on one side is Glenn, and on the other side is Slicky, and then Glenn Matlock's kind of pounded. Clem Burke's kind of pounded away on the drums behind me. That was like, that's all your kind of rock and roll dreams come true.
Yeah.
And the audience were with us as well. It was like they wanted to see this new entity. So, we did a couple of covers and they were singing along, and it was great. So, there have been a couple of there've been many moments that are pinch me moments, but those two, because I love music and I love fashion. Um, those two things were great. They're great. Time doesn't matter, and nothing else matters except for that moment. Everything else goes away and you're in that moment. It's very pure, kind of the
Yeah.
zen, the total zen moment where nothing else is happening except for you're in it, and it's great.
It's like you're floating in a dream.
You're floating, we have a lot of there's a lot of personal pressure in our lives, and a lot of we carry a lot, all of us, we carry a lot of weight, trauma from when we were kids, things that have happened to us in our lives. And um, it doesn't matter what you do, whatever it is that you do that you love, if you can get to that, um, everything kind of melts away. And it's a magical moment. I hope everybody gets at least one chance to experience that, but hopefully many.
Yeah. I didn't know. Again, I've done a little bit of research and tapped my dad for a bit of advice and little inside knowledge. I didn't realize I used to play your song on Guitar Hero. I didn't know that. I knew that I played the song, and I like because I did every single song on there. But it was only recently that my dad told me, "Hey, did you know?" And I was like, "No, I didn't. I didn't realize
That's
at
very
all."
funny. Yeah.
So
Well, that's great. That's
it's like
great.
a full circle thing. I wasn't very
So,
good. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna steal anyone's job. That's for sure. But that's a
well, that's good.
crazy.
So we got the GCSEs and we got the Guitar Hero, which
You
have been
basically influenced my whole life.
no, that's definitely not true. But at least there's 2 points where something positive. So great.
Yes. um, I know that I've asked you this personally, but how am I going to word this? How did you feel at times when you may have had imposter syndrome, or do you
Well,
still
that's
get
all.
that now?
It's all the time. Yeah, all the time. So I just started teaching a class with the University of Southern California online. They're in LA, and the first class of any new class in the beginning of the semester is all the energies coming from you and going to that group of people, because they didn't do an assignment, they don't have anything to prepare or present other than introducing themselves for a few minutes. But even somebody who speaks for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, still you've got a 3 hour class where you have to carry that as the
Yeah,
professor. And every time it's a feeling of wow. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know anything about my subject matter. I shouldn't really be here. So whether it's as a professor or I've been in recording studios with like amazing players, and they ask me, so what do you want, and it's kind of like, and you have to step up. You have
yeah,
to direct someone. We recently worked with Mike Garson, who's Bowie's piano player. He played
mhm,
on Aladdin Sane is the most kind of famous record. And Mike asked me, "What do you want?" And so you have to kind of step into that moment and take command.
yeah.
Um, Sorry, I can hear all of the cop cars coming. Hopefully, they're not coming for me. Bit of New York street effects in the background. Yeah, all the time. I mean, it's. I think most people uh, have that emotion of like, should I be here? Um, why am I here? What do I know?
How did I get here?
How did I get here? How did this happen?
It's very similar, I guess, to the pinch me moment. It's kind of on the same vein, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't it doesn't matter how immersed you are in a subject matter that you've spent your life learning and perfecting in some way, but I think there's still a moment where everybody feels insecurity. It's a human thing. I actually
Yeah.
think it's good. I think it's good to be vulnerable. I think it's good to show your vulnerabilities. I think it's good to talk about insecurity. It's not a weakness. It's just part of the human experience.
I think that talking about your insecurities makes you brave and gives you
Yeah,
that feeling inside that helps with your confidence as well. And yeah, that's how I see it.
yeah.
I said at the very start that you wear quite a few hats. So obviously you're a professor, you're a musician, you're a designer, you're a director, and you're an author. Um,
That's true. Well,
I
yeah,
never.
as of a week ago.
No, you. This isn't your first book, though, is it? I thought you had a different one
It's
as
the
well.
first. I had a book about 15 years ago, but it was kind of a really great writer, researcher, Paul Gorman, came to New York and interviewed me for
Right,
over a period of time, and then he sort of transcribed that. So it's billed as co-authored, but really Paul did the work. But on this
right.
one, the new book I really did the work.
I have got it. It did arrive
Great.
Saturday, I think. I've not. It's on my bookshelf. I've not read it yet, but I'm very excited to start it. When did you decide that you wanted to write a book?
Um, I in 2022, I was commissioned by Hachette Lawrence King. Lawrence King is an academic publisher. This is an academic book. It doesn't probably look so much like an academic book because it's got a beautiful hardcover, and John Allen, the book designer, did an amazing job on the design. And I worked with a brilliant editor, Sophie Weiss, who's the Hachette UK actually commissioned me. So it's over a couple of years ago, and then I actually started in earnest writing it at the beginning of 2023, and I spent the most of last year, every pretty much every evening, or every other evening, with my head down, kind of wading through all of the copy, and I did a series of interviews for it that sort of shaped the book. What I should have done is I should have done the interviews first, and then built the book around the interviews, but I kind of did it in reverse. I learned a lesson from that.
It is an
But yeah,
absolutely gorgeous looking book.
it looks nice. Yeah, I totally no credit to me. That's John's work. He did a great job, and yeah, it's but the content is actually I think very compelling. And if you're going to start a fashion company, I've done it a few times, and I've had a lot of failures and some success. And the failures are good because you learn from them, and
Yeah,
you're doing something that's outside of your comfort zone. If you fail, so you should not be ashamed of it. But I put everything that I know that is a sort of positive step towards doing this, and it's not just for designers, it's marketing, it's public relations, it's the whole scope of how you would do it, big or small.
yeah.
So hopefully it's going to be useful to people.
Definitely looks it. Like I say, I had a very quick flick through it, and the bits I saw do look very, very interesting. I'm very excited to get stuck in with that. Speaking of failures, um, the University of Failure line that you did, I absolutely adore. I think it's wonderful. I've been told the quality's great. I've not seen it myself in person, but um, I know my dad was very excited to get that on when I sent it to him. So that's a wonderful line that you've done. Again, still has like the punk vibe to it as well, which
Yeah, I guess so.
I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah. It's so that idea was created about more than 10 years ago. I did it as a branding exercise for students, and it was
Right.
kind of like do the opposite of what you're expected to do. University is all about success and ambition and accomplishment and so on. And I just thought I've always loved the idea of there's a very famous Samuel Beckett quote, and it's like I forget I'll paraphrase, but it's fail better, fail again, and then do better next time. But
Yeah.
any successful person throughout history has always said the same thing. It's fine to fail, and then just get up and try again, and try it maybe a different way, but you get to where you want to get to if you sort of keep at it. So that was the idea, and I did this branding exercise, and then it was kicking around for years. And then a friend of mine in Italy, who's a production person, he has factories in Tuscany, and he was asking me about, so what are you working on? years ago before the pandemic, and I showed him this. It was on my phone, the concept and the sort of little presentation, and he laughed and he thought it was funny, and like, oh, Keenan, you're such a clown. And then he went home and he said, send it to me. So I sent it to him. And then he showed his two sons, who are at that time were like 14, 15 years old, and skaters. They were totally into like the skateboards and the whole thing. And they loved it. And so he came back to me. He said, oh, we should do this as a brand. And then the pandemic happened, and several other things happened. So eventually we got to it this year, and we got an order from a big retailer. So we thought, yeah, let's go for it and build it, ship it, see how it does. And if it fails, hey, it's in the title.
Yeah. I don't think it'll fail. I think you'll be great. Do you have one of them? So, of all the things you do, is anything your favorite? Like, do you get excited to do one thing more than the other, or is everything sort of equally at that time?
Um, it's just as things, uh, some things come along, and some things I strive for, and they don't happen.
Right.
It's like, or they do happen, or they happen later, or whatever. I mean, I have to say, this year, so I turned 60 in April, and so this year is Year of the Dragon. The dragon symbols every 12 years, and so I was determined to like do some stuff this year. So I figured, okay, I've got this book, and that was going to come out. Did a record with my friend in Italy. That's coming out in a couple of weeks, couple of months, weeks, I guess, November. Um, and the University of Failure thing, I started working with the real University of Southern California. So I figured I'd kind of go for it this year and work hard, and have a few things to sort of tick the boxes on for my 60th year. And then when I'm 61, then I'm going to just chill out.
Just relax for a little while.
Yeah, right.
Is there anything that you wish you could do that you haven't done yet, or anyone that you wish you could work with that you haven't yet?
Yeah, I'd love to work with Brian Eno. Um, uh, but I don't know how or or what on. He's just such an amazing creative individual. Whether it's musically, I mean, he considered himself to be a non-musician, but he's done soundtracks for amazing movies. He's worked with from Roxy Music to Bowie to Talking Heads to Coldplay to all of these iconic. As a
Yeah,
producer, he's produced all of these iconic people, and as a visual artist too. He's done a lot of amazing things, and he always he talks about imposter syndrome. He talks about being a non-musician, not being a real artist, and all this kind of stuff. So I sort of always have an affinity with that, and he's got seems to have a great sense of humor. Um, so yeah, I mean, maybe I tried to work with Madonna about 50, 50 maybe 15 years ago, and it didn't happen. But I was kind of quite interested to work with Madonna because we're
yeah, that'd be
sort
uh,
of the same generation. And my
that'd be
wife,
interesting.
they were all kind of part of the same scene in downtown New York in the
Right.
sort of late 70s, early 80s. So there's a lot of there's a lot of symbiosis there.
Do you have any advice for anyone who is either coming from a small town trying to move to a big city, or somebody who has an idea that wants to try and get out there?
Just go for it. Always go for it. Think big. It's a friend of mine always says it's just as hard to do something small as it is to do something big. So why not think big? Like,
Yeah,
why not go for it, and go for it sort of in a big way. Um, that doesn't necessarily. I'm not meaning monetarily or in a kind of materialistic way. Um, but if you're going to go somewhere, go all the way. If you're going to do something, do it to the fullest extent that you can.
yeah,
Why not? And just don't be afraid to fail, um, because that's often on someone else's terms, actually, whether you've been successful or whether you've failed. whether you're the real thing or whether you're an imposter, whatever. It's usually it's your own insecurities, but it's also a measurement that is put on you by others often.
Yeah.
So yeah, just have a go. I mean, the thing is, not everyone. We're lucky to. I feel my generation was lucky to grow up in a time um, when there was a lot of access to things, and not for everyone for sure, um, but from education, which was kind of a ladder to a different place or a different point in life, and it was very accessible. And I don't ever take for granted today the fact that it's a very different landscape. Um, so I'm not being flippant when I say, sorry to quote your dad's band name, but I'm not being flippant when I say, um, just go for it. But yeah, have a go. Why not?
What's the worst that could happen?
Well,
Try
the worst that
again.
could happen, the worst that could happen is you could be on stage in front of 2,000 people, forget all the words, and you know,
But hopefully they'll
which
laugh
can
along with
happen.
you, so it's fine.
Hopefully they'll laugh along. Yeah, the amazing thing I think about being um, in an environment like that, or doing a fashion show or something, or being on stage. When I was a kid, I was in a play, Julius Caesar, and I played Brutus. And it was my big moment. I came on stage, I had a line to deliver, and I came on stage and I tripped over a chord and fell flat on my face. And then I stood up and I couldn't remember any of the lines from that moment forward. And I was mortified, but everybody said to me afterwards, "Oh, you were so punk because you had like the spiky hair." This wasn't in Edlington. This was in my other school. They said, "Oh God, you really like flipped the teachers off because you just didn't know any of the lines, or you wouldn't." They said you wouldn't say any of the lines, but it's because I couldn't remember them. But I was mortified. I was like mortified. I fell flat on my face. I thought I'd made a real idiot of myself. But my peers were in the audience. They were laughing, but they were laughing with me at what they thought I was creating.
Yeah.
So I mean, I wish I'd known that because I would have had a different confidence. But it's people carry you. People carry you if they're with you. That energy, they carry you, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Before I let you go, do you have any final things you'd like to advise anyone? Any bits of advice, or just anything that I've missed that you think might be important?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is, there are. Um, I mean, we've talked about some things that I've done that I'm proud of and that I've had success with, and so on. But as well as that, in my life, I've had a lot of really dark moments and dark times, and feelings of hopelessness as well. I think all of us as humans, we experience the euphoria of great things that happen in life, and we experience the times when it doesn't uh, seem to be um, there doesn't seem to be a possibility for us. And some people succumb to that, and it's very sad and very unfortunate. Um, what I would say as a message is that you know try to know that when you're in a dark place, the the the, the next steps forward will take you beyond that. It doesn't always feel like that at the time, and I've been there. I've been there, and I will be there as well. I will be there. It's not that's not in the past, present, or future. It's ever existing. But you just got to believe that um, the the better things will present themselves.
Yeah.
And but as I say, I don't take it lightly that um, you know it's great today that mental health is being discussed in a much more open way than
Yes.
ever. When we were kids, people didn't speak about those kinds of issues, and that was a time and place in society when things were kind of locked away. And I think at least today globally as a society we're more open to
Yes.
discussing those things.
Yeah, and
You
I
know,
think
and
it's the same. My generation, I'm almost 40. I'm 40 in a couple of years, and I don't think when I was younger, mental health was really discussed either until maybe the last 5 or so years where people have been more comfortable talking about it. So it is comforting, I guess, to know that it's everyone who deals with this kind of thing. It's not
yeah,
just,
yeah.
you know,
Even things like dyslexia. I have friends who, in school, they were undiagnosed and they were treated as if they were stupid. And they're really smart people,
yeah,
um, but they have a condition that may gave them learning difficulties. But they obviously they're very intelligent, smart people, capable people who've gone on and had amazing success, and in life, personally and professionally. Um, so it's great that today we're kind of more open and more understanding, um, and able to, as a society, not not be judgmental, um,
yes.
to
I
a
believe
degree. I
every
mean,
day
it's
is a school day, and
yeah, yeah,
if people can learn how to deal with mental health better, whether
yeah,
it be doctors or psychiatrists or therapists or just general people, then I would rather learn that every
yeah,
day and improve to help other people if I can.
sure,
So I think
yeah, and
every day is a school day.
you got to just jump in and do it, and as well, and try and do the work yourself as well. I mean, I've done it all. I've been to ashrams, I've been to therapists, I've done everything. You know, uh, and it all helps. It's all helped me. That's to help
Yeah.
me. I'm not saying everybody should do that, but it's that exploration of the human condition is very positive.
Yes.
Um, and again, not everyone has the opportunity to do that, but if you have the opportunity to spend time on yourself and to try to process things that you may be carrying with you, um, that's a great thing. It's a brave thing to do,
Yes.
um, and and it goes back to the success and failure thing. You may have some success with it. You may feel that it's failed, but if you don't approach these things, and if you don't again have a go, you'll never know, and you could find your way through something that feels like a dark period in life,
Yeah.
rather than just living with it. But again, some people don't have that opportunity, and that support system, so it's not something that I say I'm taking it lightly. um,
Thank you so much for coming to talk to me. Thank you for being so honest, especially with that last part as well.
yeah,
I really
pleasure.
do appreciate it. So thank you so much. For anyone who is still listening, I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. If not, never mind. But thank you very much. I'm going to call it a day and we'll hopefully speak to you soon.
Thank you.